I've never drank and I've never done drugs. Psychedelics. It's a word that was created by someone in Canada around the 1970s. Of course, it was practiced in many cultures under very specific circumstances and prescribed for very specific people. You know, if you ask me, have you ever fallen in love? I say yes. If you then ask me what age, was it 15 or was it 40? I said, well, I fell in love at the age of 15. How did it work out for you? I became a poet. I became like Jesus Christ. I became a Lamb of God. I sacrificed myself for this person. I sat by the phone for hours. I spent my money in all sorts of different ways. She left me. And then I did therapy for the next 5 years. But once in a while, the trauma comes to the surface where I ask why or how or when. While it lasted, it was really, really good. It gave me a perspective into a world I had never known existed. But now, I experienced it. It was wonderful. And then I healed, because eventually, whenever you're high, off of anything, when you fall in love, when you become intoxicated, the wrinkles in life disappear. And life has a lot of wrinkles. Life is, the moment you wake up, there is struggle and strife until the time you go to bed. And so, it's like bringing your car to our car wash, and I look at the paint and it's oxidized. And I spend the next 2-3 hours buffing the car out. And then the glossiness comes out, and you put another layer of wax or 2 on it. And so the gloss can remain for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks before it disappears again. So that's what psychedelics do for the most part. That there is something about you that feels uneasy about yourself, about life, maybe about just a social condition. Maybe temperamentally you just happen to be wired to be doom and gloom. You're not really that creative. You don't really have much discipline. Maybe you hang around with losers. Who the hell knows? All sorts of different reasons. And so very much like a car taken to a detail shop, you take psychedelics. And next thing you know is that life is filled with glossiness. It's beautiful. It's like how some of the people describe near-death experiences, that all of a sudden the colors in flowers have a different feel to them. People have a different feel to them. Life has a different feel to it. But how often can you really have near-death experiences? How often really can you be high before your life completely falls apart? You just go nuts. So going back to my analogy of love at the age of 15, and it takes me a while to recover. Eventually I realized that I am alone and I am lonely, and it's miserable being alone and lonely. So I go out there to date, but I've been contaminated. I've been contaminated because I now enter into relationships with an expectation. I want love. I want to experience the wings that I once had, but clipped for whatever the reasons. I no longer want to just have dim or insignificant feelings. I don't want to be in a relationship and be bored. I want to be a poet the way I was from the age 15 to about 20. And now I begin to compare and contrast. And it never occurs to me that perhaps love is something that just comes down magically once in a while to kind of remind you that there is more to you that meets the eye. And so even though the person may be really nice, even though the person may be very solid, I'm looking for a fantasy. I'm looking for love. I never ask, is love about knowing? Is love about understanding? Is love about sacrifice? Or is it just to feel good for a few weeks? Is love about equality? Is love about self-knowledge? None of those things occur to me, because that's what feelings do. You don't think about this stuff in a healthy way. And so I go out with this person for a number of weeks or months, and I realize, yeah, they're really, really nice. I'm just not in love. So I walk away. And then I say, well, people are no good. There is something about them that's just missing, and I don't know what it is. And the truth is, there is nothing missing in people. What is missing is that you were given an experience far too early in life, without understanding, without the proper experience, without discipline, without training. All you saw was that at the age of 15, you walk into life and there are no wrinkles. Life is beautiful. And it's like someone dropping you from the helicopter at the very top of Mount Everest. But you have no idea what it means to climb up, to see your companions die, to see some of them freeze to death. You don't have to deal with the emotions, the conflict of you saying to yourself, maybe I should go back. Maybe I should just go back to the city, go back to my family, stay warm. No, you just kind of just drop, and you're at the very top, you're in the presence of God, you look down, and you cheer your companions, come up, hurry up. It's really, really nice up here. And so that's what love does. That's what psychedelics do. That you may be 18, 19, 20, zero life experience, zero experience. You're just an idiot, really, for the most part. But you do understand that, life makes you responsible for the things you don't want to be responsible. You just want to have a good time. And life is like a thief, steals all those things away from you. And so someone comes to you and says, there is a way out of life. And you say, well, how's that? Well, I have some things in my bag. Once you go, we can go to the car, to the house, or somewhere, in the park, and I can give you this and that. And you can have a taste of love. You can alter the way you see the world. And you say, okay, and you're in the right place, because life has nothing to offer you. It's like being in a long-term relationship. Long-term relationships do not require love. They require awareness, responsibility, mindfulness, obligations, understanding. You can have an affair. That can grow your wings for a moment, but then you get grounded because of guilt and all sorts of other issues. And so psychedelics can do wonders for you. And then eventually you kind of drop back down and you stay in this room. The conversations are interesting. People are uninteresting. You've had an experience and it's great. But very much like my experience of love, it was supposed to help you, but now it harms you. One of the things that whenever you have something that is of great value, you protect it. You protect it because it can be really good. It can also be very harmful. And so what you have in the cultures that experiment with drugs, and in fact prescribe drugs to some of their own people. First, it's a culture filled with healthy psychological narratives that people don't demonize, just living ordinary life. People don't usually get bored because life is busy with all sorts of things. You have a wife, you have a husband, you have kids, you have in-laws, you have outlaws, you have friends, you have mortgage, you have all sorts of things that you got to do on a daily basis. So boredom doesn't visit you. The things that do visit you are frustrations, anxiety, responsibility, just being exhausted. It's like going to Afghanistan. That's how the tradition of Afghanis have been for many, many hundreds of years. That a woman gets married at the age of 14 or 15, and by the time she's 20, she's got 4 kids. She looks at her husband and says, listen, I'm tired. I gotta cook for you, cook for the kids, clean the house. Your parents are here all the time. Bring in another woman. Get married. And the guy goes out there, gets married again. And now he has 2 wives living together. And with the second wife, now he has 2 kids. And now both women work together harmoniously. But the house is filled with 50 people. So both women go to the man and say, you need to bring another woman. So it's not a surprising thing for that particular culture where a man has 2, 3, 4, 5 wives. Now, when you look at industrialized nations, when you look at places where life is filled with privilege, I'm not talking about you becoming Sigmund Freud, where cancer has 90% of your body and the pain is just far too great. And you say, you know what, I need cocaine, I need something to dim the pain. Last week, Thursday, when I wasn't feeling well and I was home alone, I had some pills given to me because of my heart surgery. And I was very close to taking them because the pain was just too much for me. And I'm not sort of a person who enjoys taking drugs, any kind of drugs. So what happens in cultures where it's healthy and strong, because they've been around for maybe hundreds, if not thousands of years, is that they say there are certain people in our community that they want more from life than what life offers. It's not because they're young, it's not because they just want to experiment and explore, because the culture disdains those things. The culture frowns on people who take advantage of their freedom in all sorts of ridiculous ways. And they don't really care of what the experience is. The experience by itself is meaningless, especially if it can't be put in life in a healthy way. And so it finds that there are certain people that they are just discontent with life. And their discontent is not because they've transgressed. They haven't committed any crimes against themselves or humanity. They just, they want something from life. So some people like Muhammad go into the cave. Some people like Moses walk into the desert. Some people like Jesus just leave their parents and go to Egypt. Some people like Carlos Castaneda, in the course of working with this teacher for about, maybe 10 years, he only experimented with peyote maybe 5 times, maybe 6 times. What Don Juan taught him is get to know the roots, get to know the culture, get to know under what circumstances can you actually use psychedelics. Make sure you know the intentions, make sure you know the purpose. You're not doing it because you're an idiot. Don't do it because you just are bored. I mean, this is a really dangerous game you're playing, not only with your body, but with your perception. Because once the doors of perception shuts and you walk back into life, that perception, that experience can either harm you or benefit you. But the only way it can benefit you if you have a toolbox, if you have knowledge, if you have understanding. Let me kind of give it to you in a different way. Have you ever seen a peacock? You know, peacocks are interesting. They are, once in a while, they just open themselves up and all these beautiful feathers come up. I mean, they're gorgeous little birds, or big birds. And wherever this peacock goes, everybody looks at him. And they run to the peacock and say, "Can I get your autograph, please? Can you come to my house, please?" And all of a sudden, the peacock says, "Man, I am famous, I am beautiful. I can inspire thousands of people." What the peacock comes to realize is that the feathers are really good. They give him fame, they give him a sort of richness. But he's become self-absorbed, he's become self-centered, he's become egotistical. He has allowed the beauty that lives in him to hinder him from understanding, from growth. So you know what the peacock does? The peacock goes somewhere and plucks all of its feathers. What is it about beautiful experiences? They do something to your intellect. They do something to your self-image. They make you arrogant. They, to some extent, make life distasteful. And so something that was supposed to benefit you now stands as an obstacle. I mean, just go back in time to the moments where you fell in love and it was all consuming and you had a beautiful experience. You sat, you wrote, you cried, you prayed, you exercised patience. Yes, sure, there were moments where it was miserable and tormenting, but for the most part, it was a very beautiful experience. Now, examine the reality of what that particular emotion did for you. Every time you went into a relationship and the person out there demanded for you to understand, you say, "No, I don't want to move with understanding. I want to move through feelings." And this person will tell you, feelings come, feelings go. They're like a sand. You can't build a house on it. Move in life with understanding, not feelings. Say, no, I've been in love. What the hell do you know about this stuff? So there was another person, of course, Aldous Huxley. Huxley was interesting. Huxley, for the most part, was a very depressed human being, very curious. I mean, that's what curiosity does for you. If you're curious to know who Skylar is and what he is, and little by little he occupies more and more space inside you, and your entire energy becomes localized in him, then that curiosity can kind of create some damaging effect, which is you think about him all the time, but you can't reach him. And you want to be close, but something about you says no. At the same time, you can't forget. And so that makes you depressed, at the same time very creative. And that's what Aldous Huxley was. Huxley was a voracious reader. He really did justice to what Henry David Thoreau had stated, which was the task of some human beings, not all, that their task is to suck the marrow out of life. That you know how there is a brand new, say, song by Miley Cyrus, and for some strange reason, the melody, the notes, everything just touches you on a level that you can't really describe. And you keep playing the music over and over and over and over again. And what basically you're doing is you're living Henry David Thoreau's motto. You're sucking the life, sucking the marrow out of this music. And then after the 51st or 60th time you listen to it, you realize it has no life left in it. You have taken its soul. It can no longer offer you anything. And so you shut off the radio and you walk away. And so that's what Huxley did. He read and he reflected and he read and he reflected and he read and he reflected and he wrote perennial philosophy, you know, Doors of Perception, all these funny little books. He came to this place though. He said, you know, you ever like someone? You know when you like someone, what happens? You can fantasize about them for only so long. And then you will do all that you can to hold their hands. There came a point where Huxley said, tired of these concepts, tired of these words. You become a Karl Marx. You don't care for theories, you want action. You just don't want to look at someone from a distance. You're very close, you want to touch them, you want to feel them. And Huxley came to a point where he said, just want to see what compassion looks like from inside. All these people talk about nirvana or truth, this or that. What does it look like, the kingdom of God? What the hell does that look like? Eudaimonia, what does it mean to have the demon of happiness inside you? Nur al-Muhammadiyah, what does it mean to have the light of Muhammad inside? The promised land. I want that which Moses experienced, the burning bush. That's the promised land. Don't take me from here to there physically. Where do I go to experience the burning bush? And Huxley realized that he's done everything. It's like Carlos Castaneda, he's done everything. Your teacher says, love me, I've loved you. You know, your teacher says, come here, I've come. I've done whatever you've asked. But you promised me this experience. When is it going to happen? When is it going to come? And so Huxley calls this guy in Canada and says, listen, I know I've read some of your writings, and I know you're experimenting with this particular drug that you say has the power and the potential to change the world. Can you come to the US and to California? Maybe behind closed doors, you and I can do a few things and experiments. And the guy says, I don't really know, because I don't want to be the person who will be known as the guy who killed Huxley, because the drugs are dangerous. So eventually they agree. He comes here, and Huxley and him, sit somewhere, and they do some mind-altering drugs. And all the things that Huxley had read, and all the things that Huxley would feel while reading, and all the things that Huxley would write, all of a sudden they come to life. When you read in the Old Testament, the waters of life, that in paradise, colors are alive, they live inside you, they live outside of you. And Huxley feels that. But his doors of perception are all cleansed. But he can only have wings and fly high for so long, then he descends. And he goes around preaching to people that, listen, if you do drugs, why do you want to go to the cave and meditate? Why do you want to read? Why do you want to try to understand life? Why do you want to understand the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism? Just take some drugs, you'll have an experience, then you'll understand. But he realized that he was far too zealous, that he was far too immature to really understand the experiences. So he goes back on the stage and tells people, no. It's kind of like St. Aquinas, that for 40 years or so he just writes about Christian philosophy. Then at the age of 49 he has a spiritual experience, and he goes back to the stage and tells all of his followers that everything I've written is nonsense. What you really need is an experience. But Aquinas, very much like Huxley, had those experiences after 20, 30 years of trying to understand things intellectually and emotionally, but that didn't pan out for them. And Huxley's first wife had cancer. He had also come to realize that there is this magic that drugs can do for someone who is sick. It numbs the pain. Your mind and your soul are not going to be fully consumed by physical aches. So he told this guy, if you can come back to California, give me some drugs, let me give them to my wife so she can have an easy, pain-free death as much as possible. Then, of course, later on, Huxley himself had cancer, I think. And again, he called this guy and said, give me some drugs because I want to die peacefully. I don't want to have this agonizing death the way my wife did. All this ranting to point that there is nothing wrong with drugs as there is nothing with sex and love. As long as you know the culture, as long as you know the rituals, as long as you know the dangers, but most importantly, as long as you're working with someone who's very, very, very proficient in those kinds of worlds. And someone who's really good at what they do, the first thing that they're really interested in is your desire to understand. You need to experience understanding. When you've become a bit more mature, then you can desire to experience through feelings and emotions. One of the things that I think went wrong with just the American culture and the American psyche is that there is nothing wrong with freedom, and there is nothing wrong with your desire to experiment and explore life. The problem with that is you need a lot of maturity to be responsible for the freedom that's going to be given to you. Now, the problem with responsibility is that first you need to have a good amount of life experiences. I mean, look, the way you spend money when you were 15 or 16 is very different than the way you spend money when you're 25. It's going to be much different when you're married, and it's going to be even more different when you have kids. It's just money. Money hasn't changed, but your maturity refines the way you approach money, You deal with money and you spend money. You know, when you're 15, you're not a Scrooge. You spend it on a whole host of things, freely. And you do it because, well, you're casual. You're irresponsible. You have no idea that when your dad puts his hand in his pocket and gives you a 20, well, he spent like 9 to 5 at a factory, if it was Marx, right? At a factory, that's all he made, 20 bucks, and he's going to give it to you. Do you see the blood? Do you see the sweat? Do you see the fact that he was exploited for a day or 2 or 3 or 4? You don't see any of those things. All you know is that there is money and you want to have fun with it. When you get to be 25 or 30 or 40, you realize that you have a job. You hate your job. You hate the customers. You hate your boss. But, you know, you need to pay rent. And so you say, you know what? I'm giving my life to some factory so I can pay ends, you know. So freedom is great, as long as you have the maturity and the experience to know how to use it.